What's up, everybody? Welcome back. This is the AmeriLife Marketing Mentors. I'm your host today, David Belleville, and I am joined by the Director of Growth Marketing at AmeriLife, Ryan Eisenhower. Ryan, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, David.
Of course. And we're going to have a wide-ranging discussion, all things marketing, what agents and those in the health and wealth industry need to know heading into 2026. And so before we dive in, because I know that we have a lot to get to, can you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background starts back in 2007. I started looking into digital marketing, or internet marketing as it was called back in the day, and realized that I wanted to learn anything and everything I could about it. So I started in the world of SEO, built my first few websites on WordPress, and just went from there. Over the years, I was able to implement it in the businesses that I was in, starting with real estate. I was a major player in being able to make more sales, reach more people. So it just became a part of what I did in my day-to-day life.
Yeah, I look at real estate as a great industry to come from if you're entering the health and wealth space. There's a lot of parallels and commonalities. And so I know that you bring with you fantastic experience and knowledge, and I'm excited to jump into this today. So without further ado, let's have this conversation through the lens of a newly licensed agent who's just starting their business, or perhaps someone who might be a little bit more veteran but hasn't really dove into marketing, or they're looking to enhance their marketing efforts. And so after laying that foundation, the first question I want to ask you is, entering the new year, what is the first step that you would take if you were a newly licensed agent and you're just getting started in marketing?
Yeah, such a great question. So I would start with, what is your social profile or presence online? So today we are all bombarded with different apps and different things that are trying to reach us. And we all probably have a few favorite apps that we spend a good majority of our time. More than likely, those apps might be Facebook, Instagram, X, or YouTube are some of the most popular ones. So if you're spending time there, I would start observing a little bit more, like who is out there in the space that are actively using those platforms, and start to document it. I'm pretty old school when it comes to these things, just pen and paper kind of person. So just write down, like, what are you seeing out there? How much time are you spending on the platform? And then you want to shift it to the demographic that you're trying to reach. Are they also on that platform? Is that where they're spending their time? Map it out and get it in front of you so that you can make a better decision when it comes to committing to any particular social media profile.
Sure. As they say, go where your audience goes. And you mentioned it as well. There are a ton of social media platforms out there, and it can get kind of overwhelming for someone who's not in that space every day, especially if they're not used to posting themselves on social media. So what advice would you give someone who's feeling overwhelmed with just getting started?
Yeah, great question. So you have to get started baby steps, right? So if you're not used to doing it on a daily or weekly basis, you don't want to get yourself in a position where it becomes something you are not looking forward to doing. It needs to be natural. So I would start with, once you've decided on your platform, what kind of posting schedule can you commit to? Challenge yourself a little bit. Maybe start with one post a week. And I would definitely start with images versus video. Video can be a little bit more challenging to get into the flow of. So as you're engaging in your day-to-day life and business, start taking pictures behind the scenes. Throw it up on that platform and write something with zero expectations of any kind of engagement. Once you do that, you're going to realize it's not so bad. And you can start to build upon that.
That's great advice. A simple photo post, or just sharing a photo with a friend, right?
Yeah.
But you did mention it, video, and it is no secret, especially if we're having a conversation about social media, that short form video appears to be king, and long form video is still relevant, and if anything, could be gaining momentum and popularity. And when we think about the health and wealth industries, obviously education and trust are paramount. So we have a newly licensed agent. They're, let's say, utilizing Facebook, and they've posted for a few weeks in a row. They're starting to feel comfortable. They've got the hang of it. Now they're interested in introducing video into their strategy. What do they need to keep in mind? Do they need a big fancy studio setup like this? What would you say to help or encourage someone to start using video in their strategy if they're feeling a little overwhelmed or nervous by it?
Sure. Definitely start with your smartphone, right? They've gotten a lot better over the years, and you can produce pretty good quality content with that. And also, sometimes this natural video, as I call it, is a lot better than overly produced video. There's just something about that makes you more reachable. So I would start there and also give yourself the permission to mess up, because you're going to do that. You're going to make mistakes. It's going to feel awkward. We are all our own biggest critic, right?
Sure.
So I would just start with just getting into like, what is the topics that you're most interested in that you share with your customer base? Like, what are you most passionate about? Go over 1 or 2 points in a video and just get into the rhythm of sharing a top tip of the day. That would be a good place to start.
Yeah, and when especially we're talking about short form video, that authenticity is key. And so just like you said, get your smartphone, talk directly to your audience, and that will resonate, especially in, today's media landscape where you can just fire off a 30-second video and it could go places. So that's great advice, Ryan. We've talked a little bit about making sure that you can stay consistent with it. So you had recommended, 1 post a week if you can stick to it. But why is it so important that we remain consistent once we start?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it really comes down to how these platforms operate. So pretty much all of the platforms have ads on them, and they want to keep people on the platforms. So they are going to prioritize content creators that are consistently showing up and putting out content that is highly engaging. Sure. Now, I don't want you to worry too much about the high engagement part, because that's going to come after the fact, after you get into your rhythm. But the consistency part is the thing you need to focus on. If you do a post and then you stop for a few months and come back later, if you're not going to build any momentum off that. So you really have to get honest with yourself and set a goal. That's why we go with the pen and paper, stick with the goal, and then try to go ahead and stay on that schedule.
And have fun, right?
And have fun with it, right?
Have fun with it. So that's great. So we have our social media profile set up, and we're even feeling pretty confident in that we're getting into a groove with it. What would you recommend be the next step as they continue their marketing journey in 2026?
Yeah, so you want to make sure that you're able to continue the journey with them through a funnel. We call them sales funnels. We call them marketing funnels. You essentially just want to give someone a next step to take, right? So you put the time in to create organic content, and you don't want to lose out on that connection. So one of the best ways to do that is to either get a website or build a single landing page where you're going to offer them something and capture information. If you're not very comfortable with building out a full website, that's okay, because there's plenty of platforms out there that will allow you to build a single landing page pretty easily, and you can figure out what is that next thing that you're gonna offer them and start there. You can always revise it. You can always add on to it.
Okay, and while we're on the subject of websites, you mentioned it can be a simple landing page if you're not feeling confident enough or ready to build out a full-scale website. But while we're on the topic, what are a couple of just best practices when, thinking about building a website?
Yeah, so the way that we're set up, most of us are on mobile, right? So if you're going to build a landing page, you got to think mainly about the mobile experience. A big mistake I see with a lot of these landing pages is they either try to put too much at the top, or they miss those critical calls to actions, what's called above the fold. So just keep it simple, keep it clean. Sometimes less is more in some ways, and just use that as sort of a guiding force when it comes to creating that content.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And you're so right. Making sure that mobile experience is not an afterthought. It should be a priority. So we've got our social media presence set up, and we're building an audience, and we're funneling that audience now to our website. What would you say is the third step to keep in mind when moving forward through this funnel?
Sure. So once you capture that information, you have to have a place to send it. The best way to do that is to use a CRM, which is a customer relationship management system. You might already be using one in your day-to-day operations. It's just going to basically have basically a source for people to consolidate their information. You'll be able to reach out to them. take notes on them, and essentially engage them infinitely into the future.
So I'll be honest, in this scenario, I don't have a lot of experience with a CRM. So what are some baby steps I could take to feel comfortable before I start unleashing the full potential of what a CRM can do for my business?
Sure. So these can get pretty advanced and complex, and you're right to feel that way. So I would just start with picking one, maybe watching a small YouTube video on one just to get familiar with the overall platform and layout. And all you're doing is just adding contacts and just monitoring the information that's going into the system. So just as simple as taking notes on their birthdays, taking notes on the communications. Use it as sort of your ledger and book of business to be able to stay up to date on all of these people that you're reaching out through your social efforts.
Okay. And so now if I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable utilizing my CRM, what are some of the benefits of really unlocking its full potential?
So I go back to the world of real estate for me. So it's very hard as you meet more and more people to remember everything. So being able to understand when you met someone, what the conversation was that you had, what they're interested in, that's powerful stuff when you can bring that back up. You look like the best person in the world when you're remembering all of those small details. So we use these digital technologies to our advantage. They become sort of as an add-on assistant to you. They are your powerhouse to get through and be the best that you can be in the industry.
That's fantastic. So we've got our social media presence. We've got a website. Our audience is achieving our call to action on the website, and we're capturing information and leading that into our CRM. What's our next step?
So after that, I'm definitely a proponent of paid advertising. Now, paid ads might feel a little bit intimidating, especially if you've never done it before. You can do paid ads on Facebook, YouTube, pretty much any platform out there where there's an audience, there's probably going to be an option to run paid ads. The best way to look at paid ads is it's your way to get in front of the line. Instead of spending years on trying to, refine your pitch, you get instant feedback in real time. So I would highly recommend starting with ads, even if it's with a small budget.
That's so interesting. In our world, we often talk about organic social media and paid social media. And I just want to make sure that our audience understands if you're utilizing a paid ad campaign, as you mentioned, you are putting yourself at the front of the line. We could spend all day talking about paid ads and we could get pretty inside baseball, but let's stay surface level. And what would you say are 2 to 3 things to keep in mind if you're looking to go down that route?
Right. So I would start with thinking as paid ads as an extension of the organic content you're already putting out. So if you're starting to find that there's a particular subject that you're focused on, you've already got some of the things in place. Hopefully at this point, you put a few pieces of content out there and you have some type of capture device like a landing page or a website. So all you're doing is essentially taking that and running the ads to that landing page where you're capturing information. What is the value add that you want to give to people? What do you want to offer? Maybe it's a checklist. Maybe it's a top 20 things that they need to keep in mind this season when they're looking at different policies. Figure out what you're comfortable with teaching about and use that as a means to build those connections.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Always be providing value. And that's great advice, whether you're running a paid ad campaign or organic social. Everything should have a goal and value attached to it. So just to recap, we've got social media, we've got a website, we've got a CRM, and now we're running a paid ad campaign. What's the 5th and final thing, if we had to put a round number on it, that you would recommend we keep in mind heading into 2026?
Sure. So this goes back to where I started, SEO, which stands for search engine optimization. Now, there is a term right now going out called search everywhere optimization, but the idea is how are people finding content and engaging? Every different profile or platform out there has sort of a psychological need that it hits. So for example, YouTube often becomes a platform for education and long form content. profiles like Facebook tend to be like what's happening in the neighborhood, what's happening in the area. So when you think about these things, your website is going to model that. You want to make sure that you're putting out content that is authentic and SEO optimized. Now, what are some of the best ways that you can do that? Just be natural. We're in a world right now where AI is out there and there's a lot of content that just doesn't feel human.
Sure.
Be yourself. Show your subject matter expertise. Tell a personal story, something that AI can't necessarily replicate, and just go with the groove of it. And that will really help you out in terms of developing your SEO profile and building your presence online.
That's fascinating. And, we just finished talking about the benefits of paid advertisement. How would you compare and contrast an approach for advertising and an approach for SEO?
Yeah. So with advertising, again, you're really going to be focused on what can I get out there that is a value add where they can get something in return instantly. SEO is going to be more focused on your subject matter expertise, right? So you're not necessarily always giving something away. Sometimes you're just going to have content that is going to give them news, or it's going to give them things that they need to be thinking about, because you're building that know, like, trust factor. That's what it's all about. It's all about the human experience and taking that digital persona and making it as close to the real version of you as possible.
That's fantastic. So in other words, what I'm hearing is that, how you present yourself on social, and especially with paid advertising, is you're offering a value and you're kind of hoping for lack of better terms, quick wins.
Correct.
But when it comes to SEO, this is sounding like more of a long game, something that you have to buckle in for, something that you have to spend time on. So if I were to easily compare and contrast the two, social media is great for engagement and, quick interactions and immediacy, as opposed to SEO is long game and building authority in your industry. Is there anything that you can add to that?
That's really a great way to put it, and realize that with all of these different actions that you can take, again, you have to just take this in small steps, right? Everything is a bridge to another action, right? And so this is not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not even going to be something that might even happen within a year. You are going to have to build yourself into the rhythm of this and just get comfortable with what you feel is appropriate to engage. And if you get to a subject that I'm not all about that, there's opportunities to hire experts out there to fill in the void.
Yeah, that's a great advice. And so, just to recap, because there's one more major topic that we need to get into, and we'll get there in just a moment. But what I'm now picturing is a holistic approach to marketing, albeit there's plenty that we could have dived deeper into. But just to keep things simple and easy to implement, pick a social media profile that you're comfortable with and post consistently. Then build a simple website. Make sure that you have a CRM so you can funnel information garnered by that website and into your CRM. If you want, start considering paid advertisement campaigns and ensure that you have a SEO strategy so that you can get discovered. I think that's great advice, and our website is linked below. If you want to book a consultation, we can do deeper dives into any of these subjects. But as I just mentioned, there's one more topic that we can't escape from as we enter 2026. And that's AI. Everything that we just talked about has an AI component to it. And so before we start talking about, how we can implement AI into our industry, what would you say is something that you're most excited about as AI really starts to take over?
Yeah. So when AI really started to come on the scene, I think everyone was a little bit alarmed. Like, what is this going to do? How is this going to help? What is it going to impact? And what I've realized is AI in its current form is a productivity booster. Have you ever had that thought where you're like, I wish I had 2 or 3 of me to do this at the same time?
Of course,
right?
every day.
That is essentially what AI can do for you. Now, when it comes to getting into it, again, very much like the social profiles, there's AI tools everywhere, and it can feel absolutely overwhelming. But there's probably a good chance you've either heard or used something called ChatGPT. And I do want to talk about that a little
Sure.
bit. So ChatGPT is one of the large language models that are out there. There's quite a few competitors to it, but in essence, we'll just focus on that. A lot of times you'll use ChatGPT, maybe you'll have it help you write something, maybe you'll use it very much like Google and ask it a question, but the real power lies in training the model. So what I mean by that is as you interact with that, you can start to teach it, how do you speak? How do you write? What are the things that are important to you? Where are your areas of expertise? And it can help you boost your productivity and get things done a lot faster. So then you're not having to sit here and think about things.
Yeah.
You've got the AI version of you right there in front of you.
That's so well said. And just like, posting on social media or creating short form video or long form video content, I have found that the more and more I just use AI, the more and more I feel comfortable with it. I unlock new tools or ideas in which I can use it. And so for anyone who's out there that's not utilizing AI yet, maybe they're intimidated by it, I would just also encourage them to give yourself grace, to give yourself patience, but just use it. And over time, you'll really start to get the hang of it. And as you mentioned, it's a productivity booster and can really take the mundane out of your day so that you can focus on what matters. Let's get a little personal. What are some ways that you use AI?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that really excited me about GPT was its ability to analyze images. So you can actually take an image of something and get feedback in real time, which is incredible. And to this day, when I use it, I still have a hard time grasping that it has the ability to do this. I've found that because I am so interested in learning new tools, I want to find a faster way to learn that. And instead of sometimes watching a YouTube video, I'll go straight to the tool. I'll take a screenshot and I'll say, tell me how to do this. And it can do that to some degree. So it really does have more capabilities than people probably think. You just got to just get out there and experiment with it.
Yeah, that's so good to keep in mind. And also, I feel like we should mention that even though AI is great for productivity and it can do a lot to aid you in your business, it's not perfect. And there are what is called hallucinations in the AI world. And just like anything, you should be fact checking the result. You should cross reference. In other words, you shouldn't take yourself out of the mix. It's an assistant. It's there to assist you. And so make sure that you're doing your due diligence to fact check and cross reference and make sure that everything's buttoned up, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. And you're absolutely right. You can't always take what it says as the actual truth. And, this is where you're going to have to just get familiar with those signs, especially when it comes to displaying your expertise. You are the subject matter expert. Yeah. Make sure you tap into that. Use AI as a tool for productivity to help you brainstorm, but make sure you have the final touch on anything that goes out.
Yeah, the human touch is as relevant, if not more relevant than ever. Ironic as AI grows, but people are still craving that human element, that authenticity, and that human touch. And so I think that that's a fantastic note to end on. Thank you so much, Ryan. Do you have any final thoughts for us today?
Yeah, just give yourself the grace to learn these tools and take the time. You're not expected to be an expert right off the bat. Ask questions, continue to be curious, be a student at heart like all of us, and you will get there.
That's great. Be a student, never stop learning. Ryan, I learn from you every day. I'm so grateful for your time today. This was a great discussion. I know that we're going to be seeing a lot more of you on the AmeriLife Marketing Mentors. I can't wait to have future conversations, dive into all things marketing, AI, SEO. We have a lot more to discuss and we've got a lot more time ahead of us. So I can't wait for our next conversation. Until then, I'm David Belleville with the AmeriLife Marketing Mentors. That's Ryan Eisenhower, and we'll see you next time.